From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Hey folks, thanks for joining another episode of the Superpowers School podcast. Today, I have quite an interesting guest. When I saw this guest profile, I was just blown away by just such amazing experiences that he's had. He's been the CEO of a zoo. He's busted a large lottery fraud, and he's an entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to be exploring some of those topics today. And he's got the most awesome surname. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Terry Rich to the show. Hey, Terry, how you doing?
Oh, Paddy, nice to be with you.
Terry, I'm so excited about this episode. I'd love for you to share your background, where you've come from, your journey, all of those good things.
Well, I got to the entrepreneur stage because I grew up on a farm and we didn't really have a lot of money. So I learned the hard way that hard work and creativity together combined for a really fun life. So I grew up on the farm, went to school, went to Iowa State. I was going to be a math major. And then somebody said, hey, you can go over here and talk and make a living. Hey, that sounds good to me. So I got into TV and radio. And out of Iowa State University, this small state in the middle of the United States, I started in cable television. Most of my friends went to broadcast television, and I went to cable television before it was cool. And in those years, I really learned what entrepreneurship was all about. Had a great boss who was encouraging. Everything we touched seemed to turn to gold. Got to work with the Ted Turners of the world who started CNN and WTBS and all of these different cable channels that were there. MTV was one that we helped start, and all of these different channels in a very wild entrepreneurial time. At that point, we had something happen because my dad always said, you know, work hard for someone. When you turn 62 in the United States, you get Social Security, and then you're going to be happy. And at age 40, a company came in and bought our New York Stock Exchange company called Heritage Communications. And all of a sudden, they had been paying me in stock options, which I had no idea what that meant. But I had all of the money I ever wanted. I had fame and fortune because I was doing a lot of on-air talent. And lo and behold, I had to decide happiness doesn't happen at 62 when I got that Social Security. Happiness happens on the way to success and the fun that I had. And that's when I really started realizing how fun that cable company was and why I should start my own company. So I did television production from there. And then at age 50, midlife crisis, I decided to run a zoo. When I ran the zoo for 4 or 5 years, I was losing $600,000 a year. And creativity and this whole entrepreneurial spirit took a city-run zoo and we turned it around. Raised about $15 million, is going to be around forever for youngsters. And then the same governor who had called me earlier on running the zoo said, would you be interested in running the lottery? And in those 10 years, I gave away over $1 billion US. And in the middle of it, you can tell I'm an entrepreneur. I love being on TV, all that. But we had to crack the largest lottery fraud in US history. And I was involved in fraud and, the whole ethics deal of when do you do something. It brought a whole different perspective. But for me, the bottom line in all that and all of those is that I learned that you want to do something you enjoy, and that's happiness happening on the way to success is a big deal. I also learned, because as I do these speeches and talk about either the fraud or creativity, I'll have people come up and say, especially younger people just getting into business, saying, haven't you ever screwed up? Haven't you ever made a mistake? And I thought, oh my God, yes, we all make mistakes. And when I work with CEOs all over the world, everybody has the same kind of theory. They say, my son's at Yale and my other's at Oxford and somebody else. But Susie, 10 quite find their way. Everybody's got a problem in life, right? Yeah. And everybody's stepped. My first big failure started, which really set my whole career in motion. When I was working for the cable company, I was doing on-air talent, and we did this show called Bingo, drawing numbers and giving away prizes to cable customers. And I noticed I didn't have a 5 o'clock shadow. So I thought, I'm going to write to this chick and tell him how well I love the razor. Maybe I could get on national TV. So I sat down. In the old days, we called these things typewriters. They're a little different than how they work today. And I sent a letter out. Yeah, we used to send real letters, stamp on it, sent it off to Schick and said, hey, I love your razor. I don't get a 5 o'clock shadow, and I'd love to do a TV commercial for you. I knew that I'd be called within 2 weeks to go to New York. So I sent that letter off, and just like today, you probably, if you've ever played Euro Millions or a Powerball or a big lotto jackpot, the feeling of what would happen if I could get a TV commercial and be on national television, how cool would that feel? 2 weeks to the day, I got the letter. Here's what it said. Dear Mr. Rich, expressing your complete satisfaction with your Schick Track 2 razor, we're glad you enjoy it, but we regret to tell you, you wrote the wrong company. Gillette makes that one, and here's their address. So I had failed. But you know what happened? I got my mind motivated to try to be on national television. And since that time, I've been on every major cable network and every major national broadcast network in the U.S. and around the world. So I lived my dream by failing. And I always say failure is the first step to success. And I really emphasize that because as I had grandkids and they came over, and even my kids, I had my young, Brinley's her name. She crawled up to the couch, pulled herself up. And what did she do? She reached out to take her first step. But what happened? Boom! She fell. She failed. But what did she do? She didn't know that she hadn't had experience before what falling was all about. So she crawled over, took 2 steps and 3 steps. And of course, today she's running all over the house. And it kind of taught me that failure is just the first step to success. Many of us have a project or an idea that we think is that $1 million idea. And what do? We try it. And if we fail the first time, we say, yep, no good. That's it. So I've worked a lot on trying to get people and doing a lot of motivational on trying to take that first step and developing something else as an entrepreneur. So that's a little bit of my background. And in that, I've had a lot of successes, a lot of failures, but a heck of a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. I love that, Terry. I heard this saying, failure, it's a disguise for learning, right? So it's actually every failure we have, there's always something to learn from that. And I absolutely get what you're saying there. You know, it's great to then take that learning and then maybe do things differently for the next time.
Just what you're doing in the Superpower school, I learned from my professor growing up. So I try to learn something new every day. And he had a favorite saying, and it was, it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. If you sit around and do nothing, you'll not make it very far, but trying and failing is much better than doing nothing when it's all said and done.
So Terry, what's been your biggest failure, would you say? Let's dwell on the failures first, then we'll go into the successes.
It's something that stuck with me. I ran for student body president at the university and lost. I'd won every major election I'd ever gone. You know, I was president of this and executive director of that. And I lost that. And it taught me a little bit about humility and trying to learn from that failure and taking the next step, because I never, ever want to feel that again. And I think that helps with the drive when it's all said and done.
There's a failure, obviously, and then being inspired to not repeat that mistake again. But do you feel that there are other factors? Because what I've found sometimes is usually when somebody says to me, we don't expect you to do X, Y, Z. And then in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. And then that becomes my motivation to fulfill the challenge or whatever. So would you say there are other factors as well that play here?
I think the motivation to prove someone wrong is half the drive for me. Once you've tasted success, you want to taste it again. And, you know, all of a sudden, when I turned 40 and got all this success and everything I thought I wanted by the time I'm 62, what the heck do you do next? You know, even today when I'm driving to the market and I look down and it takes me 13 minutes and 28 seconds. Next time I drive, I'm thinking, I wonder how I can make 13 minutes and 27 seconds. And failure or success doesn't come just in money that you can get. There's an inner reward. I went to a conference and on the back of the toilet was a box. And in that box, it had a hole in the middle of it. And it said, waste reducing exfoliator. I'm thinking, sitting on the back of the toilet, what could that be? Then I looked at it a little longer and I thought, those darn accountants. Very creative, because what they did, they had this box with a bar of soap. And when you go to a hotel or motel and you stay maybe one night, 2 nights, you only use a little bit, just that little bit on the outside, right? They were smart enough to cut out the middle and take that and put it on the sink And now it only takes 1 bar of soap rather than 2. They've reduced their expenses by 50%. How about that for creativity? And I call it, when I was growing up, people called me ornery because I was just maybe a little ornery. But then as I got into high school, they started using the word creativity. But I realized you can't make a dime with the best idea in the world until you innovate, until you take the step to actually do something. And, I wrote a book, Dare to Dream, Dare to Do. It's a 2-step process. The very first thing you want to do if you're going to be successful is take a bushel basket and fill it with ideas. And every idea is a good one. Then you take the second step to daring to act. And in that acting, then you start prioritizing what's the best one, because it may be the dumbest idea when you first heard about it that you put in there. But when everybody gets together and puts it together, that's what really makes it fun. And there's been some fun, creative ideas. In fact, remember the failure I had with the Schick razor, actually blunt razor. I always wanted to be on national television. A few years later, my hometown called me. They were a little town of 50, a little burb of 50 people. And they said, we're going to have a centennial. We don't know whether 100 years, but we're going to have a celebration anyway. And they asked me to help with publicity. And I was at the cable company at the time. And I thought, well, okay. So I got together with a guy and we brainstormed new ideas. And the new idea, he said, you're our most famous person, Terry, because you've been on TV and radio. And I thought, if I'm your most famous person, we better adopt somebody. And thus, an idea. And we decided to give away a free oil and lube at the local garage. We didn't have much to give away in a little town of 50. We gave away a free cemetery plot, that sort of thing. So I sat down and typed on that same typewriter a press release. And that press release said, Cooper, Iowa wants to have someone, a celebrity, to be the 51st citizen. We've never had anybody famous in 100 years. We want to adopt somebody. I sent it off, but I hit the wrong button and it printed out 44 letters. So I had to go to a library and look up, the London Times, the New York Times, LA Herald, whatever. I finally got 44 out. You know what? I failed 43 of the 44 times. 43 of the letters garnered no response. But one of those letters made it to United Press International, UPI. Didn't know what they were, but they called and said, hey, we like this story. We want to put it on the national wires. And lo and behold, they did. And lo and behold, I got a call a half hour after it was published from a guy from something called Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
Oh.
He said, hey, Johnny likes the story. We want to do something, but you got to guarantee that we're first, because you're going to get calls from all of the real people, the reality shows. So we guarantee we're first. Okay. Now remember, I failed 43 of the 44 times. None of the other letters garnered any calls. All of a sudden, we got to go be on the Tonight Show. And they talked about actually uplinking via satellite from Cooper, Iowa, and doing the entire show from Cooper, Iowa. Well, we went out and we were on, and the centennial, after we got on Johnny Carson's show, garnered, I think, 15,000 people showed up this little town to celebrate. But the story and the moral of the story in all this is I failed 43 of the 44 times. And that one idea that they gave me about being able to uplink with a satellite from Cooper, Iowa, which no one had ever uplinked in Iowa with a satellite before, gave me the idea to work with HBO, who I'd worked with in the cable business, and said, could we use that and try to do some free previews where we show you free HBO and then get on afterwards and say, hey, now's the time to call and get HBO? They said, no, I got all these rejections. And finally, the chief technician said, yeah, we can do that. And lo and behold, the weekend we tried that, all from the idea that we failed 43 of the 44 times, we sold $15 million of HBO in one weekend. And that's the moral of the story. Take ideas that you have you may fail, but that's what helps you with the success. And ultimately, I got in front of 20 million people on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show 20 minutes before a guy named Tom Jones, if you remember, really old, also on the show.
Wow. Yeah. Tom's still going strong. He's on all these great shows on TV as a judge now, I think, on some of these talent shows. But yeah. Oh, wow. What an amazing story. And so, Terry, if you sort of go back to your days as a CEO of the zoo, I mean, that was quite an interesting move where I know you said it was a bit of a midlife crisis, but I think that would be amazing to hear. How did you get into that role? And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, I decided I wanted to change because I was traveling all over in this entrepreneurial. I was doing more of these HBO free previews, traveling the world, and I was gone a lot. I had kids. I just wanted 50 years old. It's time to take a break. So I got a call from the governor, said they're going to close it. They're losing $600,000. Would you help us? So I went down, we got a group together, we formed a nonprofit, and lo and behold, they said, well, you add a new exhibit. It's, that's how you get people through the door. We need $2 million. We started brainstorming just like we're talking. And so use the same techniques that we used in all the businesses that I had helped in the past. And we thought, well, what could we do? What wouldn't cost us anything that might draw a lot of people? And we decided that we had every kid from 2 to 10, but we needed the people 21 and above, more young adults. Well, how do we bring them? What do they like? Booze. So we started Zoo Brew. We opened the zoo at night, no kids allowed under 21. And we served alcohol, had a band, and had all the animals out. And it was a great date night. Last year, they sold over $250,000 just in beer at this Zoo Brew at this zoo. And immediately we cash flowed it, turned around. Another thing we did is, what else is free at a zoo? Well, you feed the animals, but what do the animals do then? They poop. So we decided to get an exhibit called Scoop on Poop, and we showed all the different excrements of all the different animals. And the kids giggled the entire time as they were walking through. And then we realized that white-tailed deer are big in this area, but they were eating everybody's plants. And so we figured out that tigers are predators, deer are prey. And if deer, for some reason, even though they've never seen a tiger in their life, smell tiger poop, they leave. It's a great deterrent. So we started selling buckets of tiger poop for $20 and raised $20,000 that summer. Immediately cash flowed it, turned it around, and they've got enough money now in an endowment to last forever during pandemics or anything else. And that's how we really got the zoo going. And again, it's based on creating ideas and taking those, even though you fail, we failed a few times at the zoo, and turning it around.
Wow. Feels like there's going to be a Netflix series coming up, maybe.
Tiger Poo rather than Tiger Zoo or Tiger King.
Yeah. Going into that environment, talking about your previous experiences, I bet you've never run a zoo before. So going into an environment where you're perhaps not the expert in that particular domain, obviously you've got reusable skills you're bringing to the table, but where do you start?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You take the employees that are there that have strengths. Somebody's a really good tiger person, and you say, what do people like? What are you seeing when people walk in? What excites them? For me, it was just seeing kids smile. I mean, it was so rewarding to give back to the community to turn this thing around. But it was a unionized shop. It was losing lots of money. It was an old facility. And you start by just gaining trust of employees and then getting their ideas. And ultimately, they start feeding ideas back. And the idea that, I guess the best idea they fed back was all said and done. They could see that as we made more money, they wanted money for the animals. They weren't getting any from the city. They were underpaid. So we became a non-union shop. And when we made money, we gave part of it to the employees, and we gave them more money for their animals, which they really loved. And all of a sudden they really started creating ideas. And one of the ideas they came up with to raise money was something called Dream Night. They said, we want to do a night that the employees put on for the community. And what we did is contact all the doctors and all the hospital and said, we're looking, if you have kids who are going to be gone in a year, who have a terminal illness, we want to open the zoo, give them all the free rides on the train and the carousel, all those sort of, all the free food, and they can invite friends and their family to come out, and it's all free. Well, I'm telling you, everybody, when we told businesses that story, started donating to the zoo. We made lots of money, but more importantly, no one in our town knows about that. Only the people who had kids that went there know about it. It's our give back. So it's creating the innovative environment to try to get the ideas. And then when the employees come up with the ideas, you'll be amazed at how much faster it is to implement because they're 100% behind it when you jump in. Okay, one more story.
Yeah.
Talking about failure. So you have all these ideas. So I get a call from the botanical center, the garden, under a dome with all the plants in it. And they said, we have the same problem. We're losing money. You got to give us some ideas. So I met with them and did my whole theory of creativity and coming up with new ideas. And there were 6 of us, but I didn't realize who the one person was sitting over here. I knew everybody else, but the heck with it. So I just started pounding ideas down, whatever I was thinking, sitting down. 3 days later, I figured out that the person sitting over here was an editorial writer for the local newspaper, the big newspaper in our state. And they don't write the little articles down here. This is a half page on Sunday. It comes out and it says what to do with the botanical center, what an innovative leader thinks. And the top sentence was, grow a marijuana display, or How about a Venus flytrap? Big one, big enough to suck down a cow. Oh my God, I couldn't believe all these ideas, but they didn't use any of them. I failed in my effort to give ideas, but they got so excited with the ideas and it was in the paper and nobody got fired that they created their own. And now we have one of the best botanical centers in the Midwest.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. Just going back to your story with the kids, such a lovely thing to do for the community. But at the same time, it really shows the people working in the business are human and it shows that humanistic side. Do you think more organizations would be more successful if they showed that type of empathy and that type of humanistic side?
There's no doubt. Everybody wants to help out. Everybody wants to support the boss. I tell the story that if a king or queen would say, "Oh, poop," everybody heads for the bathroom because you think that's what they're telling you to do. And in fact, everybody wants to just please others. But as a boss, they don't realize how much we want to please them too. There's nothing more fun and success than we've got an employee that may have problems at home or is a non-successful in the work. Find them the right fit and they get excited and they succeed. I mean, those are as rewarding as anything that you do on ideas or money-wise. And the other is once you start making money, you realize that you become a little less risk takers probably in some ways. I think I'm taking more risk today, but I still always, anytime I have a new project or something new I'm trying, and I got a big soccer project in the works right now that I think will make some great money, but I always take 10% and that's my play money. It's kind of like gambling. You don't gamble your whole bank account. You gamble a little bit knowing you could lose it. And I do the same thing with business. Where in the early days, before I had kids, before I was married, I'd probably spend whatever just because it's a crazy idea.